Hey there, Yotam. I'm back, and I'll start reading some more. I hope you like the story. Then tell about to send me an email letting me know, or send me an email in Hebrew. I'll be able to translate it and know what you're saying. Okay, here goes. Although the endless daylight of Gup gave Harun the strange feeling that time was standing still, he realized he was exhausted. He found that he could not resist the slow drooping of his eyelids, and then his body was possessed by so magnificent a yawn that it attracted the attention of everyone in that very fancy throne room. Rashid Khalifa, his father, asked if Harun might be given a bed for the night, so that, in spite of his protestations, "I'm not in the least bit sleepy, really, I'm not," Harun was packed off for the night. The page, Blabbermouth, was told to lead him to his room. Blabbermouth led Harun along corridors, up staircases, down staircases, along more corridors, through doorways, around corners, into courtyards, out of courtyards, onto balconies, and down corridors again. A corridor is a hallway. While they walked, the page, who seemed not to be able to contain the words a moment longer, unleashed an anti-Batsheet tirade. "Fool of a girl," Blabbermouth said. "Now if my fiancée, somebody you're about to get married to, got herself kidnapped because she was crazy enough to go into the twilight strip just to go gooey over stars in the sky, and even worse, to touch the stupid wall, for goodness sake, then don't imagine I'd start a war to get her back. I'd say good riddance, especially with her nose, her teeth. No need to go into that. And I haven't mentioned her singing. You wouldn't believe how horrible." You remember, Princess Bathsheba is ugly and has a terrible voice. And instead of letting her rot, we're all going to go in after her and probably get ourselves killed because we won't be able to see properly in the dark. Because Gup is always light, but Chop is always dark. "Are we going to my bedroom soon?" Harun inquired, "because I'm not sure how much more of this I can take." You know, when I have jet lag, that's what happens to me. I fall asleep no matter where I am. "And these uniforms, you wanted to know about the uniforms," Blabbermouth continued, ignoring him and continuing briskly on halls, down spiral stairways, and along passageways. "Well, whose idea do you think those were?" "Hers, obviously, Batsheet's. And she decided to take the wardrobe of the pages of the royal household in hand, I mean, to take it over, to make us into walking love letters. That was her first idea. And after an eternity, which is forever, of having to wear kissy poo and cuddly bummy and other disgusting words like that, she changed her mind and had all the greatest stories of the world rewritten as if her Bolo was the hero or something. You remember that? All those stories that usually was about something else was about Bolo. Now instead of Aladdin, Ali Baba, and Sinbad the sailor, it wasn't Popeye, it's Bolo, 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 Bolo. Can you imagine? People in Gup City laugh at us to our faces, to say nothing of what they say and think behind our back. Then, with a triumphant grin, Blabbermouth stopped outside an extremely imposing, meaning very impressive doorway, and announced, "Your bedroom," at which the doors burst open and guards seized both of them by the ears and told them to be on their way before they were thrown into the deepest dungeon in the palace because they had arrived at the bedchamber of King Chatterjee himself. "We're lost, aren't we?" Haroun said. "So it's a complicated place and we're a little lost," Blabbermouth admitted. "But aren't we having a nice chat? To talk?" This remark so exasperated Haroun that in his exhaustion he swung an arm loosely at Blabbermouth's head, catching the page by surprise and knocking off the maroon velvet cap on his head. On her head, that is to say, because as the cap fell to the ground, a great torrent, a torrent is a pouring, of shiny black hair cascaded down over Blabbermouth's shoulders. "What did you do that for?" wailed the page. "Now you've spoiled everything." "You're a girl," Haroun said, a little obviously. "Shh," hissed Blabbermouth, stuffing her hair back under her cap. You want me to get the sack, which means to get fired, or what?" She dragged Haroun into a little alcove and drew a curtain to screen them from view. "You think it's easy for a girl to get a job like this? Don't you know girls have to fool people every day of their lives if they want to get anywhere? You probably had your whole life handed to you on a plate. Probably got a whole mouthful of silver spoons. But some of us have to fight. In America, they say if you get something on a plate, it's very easy for you. And if you have a silver spoon, that means you were born rich." "You mean that just because you're a girl, you aren't allowed to be a page?" Haroun asked sleepily. "I suppose you only do what you're told," Blabbermouth hotly replied. "I suppose you always eat up all the food on your plate, even the cauliflower." "I don't like cauliflower either." "I suppose at least I would do something perfectly simple, like showing someone where the bedroom is," Haroun butted in. Blabbermouth suddenly gave a broad, wicked grin. "I suppose you always go to bed when you're told," she said, "and you wouldn't be at all interested in going up on the palace roof through this secret passageway right here." And so, after Blabbermouth had pushed the button hidden in a very fancy carved wooden panel on one side of the alcove's curved walls, and after they had climbed the staircase that came into view when the panel slid away, Haroun sat on the flat roof of the palace in what was, of course, still dazzling sunshine, and gazed out at the view of the land of Gump, and of the pleasure garden in which preparations for war were being made, and of the lagoon in which a great flotilla, that's a bunch of ships, of mechanical birds, a flotilla could also be mechanical birds, was assembling, I guess on the water. And out across the endangered ocean of the streams of story, Haroun realized quite suddenly that even if he was ready to drop with fatigue, at that exact same moment, without a word, Blabbermouth took 3 soft-boiled balls made of golden silk from one of her pockets and tossed them in the air so they caught the sunlight and began to juggle up in the air. She juggled behind her back and over and under her legs, with her eyes closed and lying down, until Haroun was speechless with admiration. And every so often, she'd throw all the balls up into the air, reach into her pockets, and produce more of the soft golden balls, until she was juggling 9 balls, then 10, then 11. And every time Haroun thought, she can't possibly keep them all up, she'd add even more balls to her whirling galaxy. A galaxy is like the planets, many, many things in the air, of soft, swollen suns. Well, little suns. It occurred to Harun that Blabbermouth's juggling reminded him of the greatest performance given by his father, Rashid Khalifa, the Shah of Blah. The Shah, by the way, you probably, maybe you know, is like the highest person in some of the Arab countries and in Iran. I always thought storytelling was like juggling, he finally found a voice to say. You keep a lot of different tales, stories in the air, and juggle them up and down, and if you're good, you don't drop any. So maybe juggling is a kind of storytelling too. Blabbermouth shrugged, caught up all her golden balls, and tucked them away in her pocket. I don't know anything about that, she said. I just wanted you to know who you are dealing with here. Harun woke up many hours later in a darkened room. They had finally found his bedroom after asking another page for help, and he had fallen asleep 5 seconds after Blabbermouth drew the heavy curtains closed and said, "Good night." Someone was sitting on his chest. Someone's hands were around his throat, squeezing tightly. It was Blabbermouth. "Rise and shine," she whispered menacingly, "and if you tell anyone about me, then the next time you're asleep, I won't stop squeezing. You may be a good boy, but I can be a very bad girl indeed." "I won't tell, I promise," Harun said. And Blabbermouth released her grip and grinned. "You're okay, Harun Khalifa," she said. "Now get out of bed before I have to drag you out. Time to report for duty. There's an army in the pleasure garden getting ready to march into the twilight strip." "Here's another princess rescue story I'm getting mixed up in," thought Harun, yawning sleepily. "I wonder if this one will go wrong too." He didn't have to wonder for long. "By the way," Blabbermouth said casually, "I took the little liberty, at a certain water genie's express request, of removing from under your pillow the disconnecting tool, which you stole without so much as saying a thing." Harun, aghast, searched frantically through his bedclothes, but the disconnector was gone, and with it the means of getting an interview with the walrus in order to get Rashid's Story Water subscription renewed. Remember, Rashid had a subscription like when you order a newspaper to come every day to the Sea of Stories. And it got canceled, and he needs to get it fixed. "I thought you were my friend," he said accusingly. Blabbermouth shrugged. "Your plan's totally out of date anyway," she replied. "It's told me all about it, but your father's here himself now, and he can sort out his own problem." "You don't get it," Harun sadly said. "I want to do it for him." There was a fanfare of trumpets from the pleasure garden. Harun jumped out of bed and ran to the window. Down below him in the garden was a great commotion of rustling, of pages, hundreds upon hundreds of extremely thin persons in rectangular uniforms that did in fact rustle, exactly like paper. That's the sound that paper makes, like rustling. Only much more loudly, were rushing about the garden in a most disorderly fashion, arguing about the precise order in which they should line up, crying, "I'm before you! Don't be ridiculous! That wouldn't make sense! It's plain that I must stand before you!" They're being pretty silly. All of the pages were numbered, Harun noted, so it should have been a simple answer to decide upon their sequence and the order that they should be in. He put this to Blabbermouth, who answered, "Things aren't quite as simple as that in the real world, mister. there are plenty of pages with the same numbers, so they have to work out which chapter they belong to, in which volume they belong to, and so forth. And quite often there are errors in the uniform, so they've got to go, sorry, I feel like Harun falling asleep. They've got on completely the wrong number anyway. Harun watched the pages jostling and arguing and shaking their fists in the air and ripping each other up just to be awkward, and remarked, "It doesn't seem like a very disciplined army to me." Discipline meaning following rules and orders. You should judge a book by its cover," snapped Blabbermouth. Well, no, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. That's an English saying. You could look at a book and the cover might be stupid, but it might be a good book. Snapped Blabbermouth. After which, evidently a little put out, a little annoyed, she announced that she couldn't wait for Harun any longer, as she was already late, and of course Harun had to race after her, still in his red nightshirt with the purple patches, without even brushing his teeth or his hair, without having time to point out a number of flaws or errors in her argument. As they ran along corridors, up staircases, down staircases, through galleries, into courtyards, out of courtyards, along yet more corridors, Harun panted. "In the first place, I wasn't judging the book by the cover, as you suggested, because I could see all the pages. And in the second place, this isn't the real world. Not at all." "Oh, isn't it?" Blabbermouth shot back. "That's the trouble with you sad city types. You think a place has to be miserable and dull as ditchwater before you believe it's real." "Would you do me a favor?" Harun panted. "Would you ask somebody the way?" By the time they reached the garden, the Guppy Army, or library, they called it, had completed the process of pagination and collation. Pagination means putting numbers on pages, and collation means putting pages in order. Had completed the process, that is to say, arranging themselves in orderly fashion, which Harun had observed from his bedroom window. "See you later," gasped Blabbermouth, and fled in the direction of the royal pages in their maroon velvet caps, who were standing meekly beside Prince Bolo as he capered and pranced, dashingly, but a little foolishly, on his mechanical flying horse. Harun spotted Rashid without difficulty. His father had evidently overslept too, and was like Harun, still tousle-headed, meaning his hair was all mixed up and messy, and wearing nothing but a somewhat crumpled and dirty blue nightshirt. Standing with Rashid Khalifa in a small pavilion full of playing fountains, that means playing fountains, I means water jumping out of the fountain, and now waving cheerfully at Harun with the disconnecting tool in his hand, was the blue-bearded water genie, If. Harun put on a burst of speed and reached them only just in time. "A great honor to meet you," If was saying, "especially if it is no longer required to call you the father of a little thief." So If is talking to Rashid. Rashid frowned in puzzlement as Harun arrived and said hurriedly, "I'll explain later," and gave If a glare that reduced him even to silence. To change the subject, Harun added, "Dad, wouldn't you like to meet my other new friends, the really interesting ones, I mean?" Okay, I think that's enough for now. I will take a break and continue the story. And Grandpa, Grandma, and Grandpa send you our love and look forward to seeing you. You know, there's a thing called Skype, and if we had Skype, I think you may remember we did it once. You and I and Grandma and you could sit and talk to each other just like this, not on YouTube, but you would be able to answer just like you do on the phone, except we could see each other. So if you would speak to Ima or Abba or Amos when he's there, maybe even Benjamin can do it, they can set up Skype. They've got it. And if they don't have what they need, they can buy it. I'll pay for it. And then we would have Skype, and I could even read to you live. So you could stop me and say, what do you mean by that? You know? So would you talk to the family and see if you can get Skype? I've done my best, but I can't seem to get them to do it. I have friends in Israel that I speak to on Skype. I have patients. Remember, I'm a psychologist and I help people. I have people that I help that I do on Skype. And just like now, you can see me and I'm talking to you. If we had Skype, I would see you, you would see me, and we could talk to each other, and I could read to you. So, would you work on the family? Yeah, and you could say, I asked you to. Would they please set up Skype? Pretty please, 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 please. Please with chocolate icing on top. Okay, sweetie, bye-bye now.